In Essen 2010, there were 4 promo cards released for Rattus. So this is the first little Rattus mini expansion, and we have the character of Robin Hood, we have Dracula, we have Merlin, and we have Joan of Arc. So let's have a little look at what these add to the game. So here we have the cards from the Essen 2010 mini expansion, the sort of promo cards for Rattus. We have Joan of Arc, we have Merlin, Dracula and Robin Hood. Joan of Arc is a really nice card. What you do is you draw a rat token from the general supply, not from the board, and we're just using it as a way of randomizing. So if it has a activation on a 1+ or a 2+, then nothing happens. If it's on a 3+ or a 4+, then the player holding this Joan of Arc card will get to use the abilities of any royalty cards in play and also any of the bourgeoisie cards in play. If it's a 5+ rat token, then the character with the player with the Joan of Arc card will get to use the church cards and the peasantry cards. On a 6+, then they'll get to use the chivalry, military cards, or the magic cards that are in play. So it gives the player a great opportunity to use lots of different other actions and opportunities from the other cards in play. However, there is an element of randomness because you might draw a token and get nothing for it. But randomness is really what Rattus is all about. Now, because of the introduction to the game of Islamic cards with the Africanus expansion much later, the designers have put an official variant onto the Board Game Geek website, which means that now we have the situation where on a 1 or a 2, 1+ or 2+, nothing happens. On a 3, the Islamic cards can be used. On a 4, royalty or bourgeoisie can be used. On a 5, it's peasantry or church, and on a 6, it's chivalry or magic. I've pasted these cards up as I have with all of my Rattus cards because I find it easier to keep track of what the abilities are rather than having to look them up all the time, just because I have so many class cards. Robin Hood, he works like all the chivalry ones. One thing I quite like about Rattus is that the class cards have a sort of feel about them. The chivalry cards all work very similarly. So he will allow you to move the plague 2 places instead of 1, which is in common with all the other chivalry cards as well. And then where you move to, where you move the plague piece to, in that space, the player who has the majority of the cubes, you can replace one of their cubes with one of your own. Now that's before the plague activates. So you may end up losing your cube, but it does give you the opportunity to get more cubes onto the board and take away from the rich players and give to the poor, I suppose. So thematic in that way for Robin Hood. So that's a fairly straightforward card. Merlin is also fairly straightforward. What he lets you do is take a rat token from the board and you place it onto the card. Then on a future turn, you can take that token from the card, have a look at it and place it into any region. So it gives you a little control over which rat tokens are in which regions and the sort of damage that they can cause. Now, Dracula is a little more complex, and these are the sort of cards that I don't necessarily enjoy so much in Rattus, because they can add a bit of complexity. But essentially, if anybody dies on the turn, the player holding Dracula, if anyone dies on his turn, any cubes die, they're placed onto this board. And then at the end of the game, the player with the fewest cubes of their colour on this card will get 4 points, and the person with the second fewest will get 2 points. So holding this card and other people dying, you're gaining points by the deaths of the other players, which again feels fairly sort of thematic with Dracula, I suppose. But it's quite a convoluted card to explain when you've got a bunch of others to explain. And so I think it's more one to play with more experienced players who are going to be able to get their head around that concept a little easier. So the Essen 2010 promo cards, I'm not sure how easy these are to get. I imagine they're quite difficult to get hold of now. They're not things to go massively out of your way to find, I wouldn't say. There's a whole load of other cards that you can get in the other expansions, so missing a few cards is not going to adversely affect your enjoyment of the game. But these are quite nice cards. As I say, I prefer Merlin, Joan of Arc and Robin Hood to Dracula, just because I prefer the cards which are a little simpler, where there's still that sort of simple game flow rather than adding large new elements to the game. That said, Dracula is not really all of that difficult. I may be overplaying how difficult it is, but it's cards like this one that I tend to avoid when I'm choosing a selection to put together into the game. But if you can get your hands on it, this is a nice little set. Of course, it's lovely to have recognisable characters in the game. Robin Hood, Joan of Arc, Merlin, you know, these are all characters that everybody knows. So it is quite nice to have those in the game. Adds to the theme, adds to the feeling of it all. So yeah, if you can get hold of a copy, go for it. If not, I wouldn't worry about it. That's the Essen 2010 mini expansion for Rattus.